It's not fraudulent. It's not fraudulent because everybody understands. I mean, those who know about it, knew about it, so it was not fraudulent. The fact that they didn't know it, they should have. I mean,
but really, no one does.
The people who knew didn't stop it.
You made mention of the family living standard. If we restore the Bank of Canada,
That's actually an interesting question. First of all, money is prior to money. It's going to sound like a long answer, but I'm not quite sure I know the nature of your question. But let me see how I can handle it. Thank you. Prior to money, essentially trade.
It's actually simple. Over 95% of our money is created by private banks. That means there's less than 5% of government-created money. Let's look at the differences between creating the money ourselves and borrowing it from private banks. Creating the money ourselves pretty much just costs the labor to print it and the hard work to back it up, while borrowing money from private banks can cost up to 10 times or more than the principal before it's paid. Don't believe me? This is Canada's federal debt. From 1867 to 1992, we owed $423 billion. However, 91% of this debt is the result of interest on interest, and only 8% of the money was actually used on real things, like goods and services. But now we have to pay back over 10 times what we needed, simply because we borrowed from private banks instead of ourselves. So where do these private banks get their billions of dollars from that they lend out? Nowhere! They just write down a number on a piece of paper and lend it out as if it was money to families trying to put a roof over their heads, students trying to get an education, or governments looking to improve the country. Banks then get paid multiple times back with your hard work. Every time they issue a loan, they are creating brand new money. It never existed before you walked into the bank. They just get you to believe that they're lending you what's inside their vaults.
For instance, banks. Yeah, do banks have the amount of money that they have in reserve? The answer is no.
There's about $50 billion of real cash in Canada. All the private banks combined only have $4 billion in their vaults, or what they call reserves. And yet they've lent out $1.5 trillion, which they then charge interest on.
I think that the amount of money that's held in reserve in Canada, you're right, is pretty low. One of the reasons it's so low is because our banking system is as stable as it is.
Okay. So what would happen if we simply wanted our money back?
We would have a credit crisis, and the system would not be sustainable. So we'd have to reorganize and restructure, which is what happened actually in the Depression.
Overseas now to Greece, a country on the brink of collapse. Banks shuttered, ATMs running out of cash, and now echoes in our country.
All week, the banks closed, life savings locked up inside, endless lines at ATMs with withdrawals limited to just $67, if you're lucky enough to find one that still has cash.
But theoretically, that's what would happen.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a stable system.
It's only noticed that it would be called fraud if everyone came to the bank and requested their money.
I'm going to answer your question, but then I want to go back to mine, because it really is. This is the huge change of the last 5 years. It's not fraudulent. It's not fraudulent because everybody understands it, but it is.
No one really understands it.
Well, okay. I mean, those who know about it, knew about it, so it was not fraudulent.
I talked to the teachers and MPs, even MPPs, and they had no idea that there was only $4 billion in defaults, but over $1 trillion was lent out.
Let me go back. Well, the fact that they didn't know it, they should have. I mean,
but really, no one does.
Well, they quit.
Should that be involved a little bit more before we start using money? That we should be told where it is, where it comes from?
Well, no.
Okay, so it's one thing to lend out money you just don't have. But how can you charge interest on nothing? And not just any kind of interest.
Compounded interest.
It's interesting how the operation of banks in Canada are all textbook examples of fraud, counterfeit, and theft.
There was no fraud. People should have known. But there really is a problem. And that is that the people who knew didn't stop it.
Now, if I did what these private banks do on a daily basis, I would end up here. The banks can break the law, but no one else can. Well, it's technically not breaking the law when our elected officials create bogus legislation like what's contained in the Bank Act. Our government has given private companies the authority to break the law, which in turn is bankrupting the people and the government itself. And then when our government decides to so-called fix the mess that they created, they simply make cuts to all the programs that we'd like to spend our tax dollars on, and instead direct it towards an inescapable debt. How much exactly are we spending on this pointless debt? According to Statistics Canada, both federal and provincial debt combined, we're paying $160 million each and every day, or $60 billion every year.
What would make the government want to borrow money from private banks instead of the Bank of Canada?
It should deal with the Bank of Canada, period.
Yeah, we never should have privatized our debt and turned it over to the private banks. We should have kept it in the hands of Bank of Canada, at least a major part of it, because then we would have been paying interest back to ourselves. And unfortunately, the Liberal government and the Conservative governments both are too close to the banks. The banks wanted the business, and they managed to convince the government to privatize that debt. And of course, now they're the ones getting the benefits. That's why you notice that they're still very profitable, even though everyone else is suffering.
And the Green Party policies have not yet adopted the monetary policy that some of our members would like, which is one which would say we should get rid of the loans that we owe commercial banks and transfer that to the Bank of Canada and pay it off with a Bank of Canada loan and then cancel the debt.
Well, they both seem to know a lot about the monetary system to me. And yet last October in 2008, when the central topic in the federal election was about the economy,
we made a decision to give priority to an issue dominating the news and people's concerns these days, the economy. So there will be an expanded debate on that.
Not one single mention was made from any one of the parties about the monetary system, even from the ones who clearly knew about it. But if we go back to the 2006 federal debate, no one would shut up about the $100 million missing from the sponsorship scandal Paul Martin was involved with. But when $160 million goes missing every day, it's no big deal. Look, this is a mutual problem that every party should agree on fixing, and yet in the most important broadcasted debates prior to our elections, it's not even mentioned once.
Wake up! Wake up!
circulation that causes inflation, not who distributes the money, right?
It's largely the amount of money in circulation. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons, but yes, that drives up the price. That drives up prices because more people can afford to buy something.
I think what he's trying to say is now that he's allowed the private banks to make up this magical money that keeps growing in their favor, the government shouldn't borrow money from the Bank of Canada since they would have to create new numbers that don't already exist. But if the Bank of Canada had just been doing its job from the start, it wouldn't make a difference anyway. Do you see how absurd it is to say that the Bank of Canada causes inflation? Besides, since 95% of money is created by private banks, they're the cause of 95% of inflation.
170 million a day on compound interest. It sure is a lot, sir. Would you restore the Bank of Canada?
I trust Mark Carney in what he's doing. I'm going to listen to respect Mark Carney.
You made mention of the family living standard. If we restore the Bank of Canada,
Mark Carney, working for Goldman Sachs at the time, was advising the Russian government on economic policy. These policies ended in a severe economic collapse, which happened to profit Goldman Sachs tens of millions of dollars, in spite of their involvement in a $1.25 billion bailout of the Russian government. Goldman Sachs appears to have been betting against success. Mark Carney went on from there to head up the Bank of Canada.
Let's be clear about what the situation is. We have not been following the same policies as the United States. The economic and financial mess in the United States is disastrous. The policies have been irresponsible. We've made very different choices in Canada. We have a budget that's in surplus, not a budget that's in deficit. We're paying off debt in Canada, not adding to our debt.
Are your policies working?
Look, I would say that overall we're being successful. We're keeping the economy on course. We're not going into a recession. We have a slowdown. But we are not in the kind of economic crisis we have in the U.S.
And the world is entering an economic period unlike and potentially as dangerous as anything we have faced since 1929.